Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India. How can I stop being afraid of happiness? By realizing that you deserve it. There's nothing scary about happiness. Happiness isn't the stuff that nightmares are made of. There's nothing in our evolution, our physical evolution, our spiritual evolution, nothing that would make us afraid of that. We're afraid of things that are harmful to us. Wild animals, tigers and snakes and heights or deep water, closed spaces, the things that people have fears and phobias about are things that actually can harm us. Happiness is the opposite. Happiness is that which we all want. And yet, the questioner of this has touched on something really deep, because so many of us live in a way that is exactly opposite of that which brings us happiness. We do things that we think, my God, but I knew that was just going to make me miserable. I knew that was going to end in disaster. I knew we would fight. I knew that it would ruin the evening or the weekend or the relationship. I knew that I would lose my job if I did this. I knew. But we do it because on some very deep level, there's something inside of us that doesn't want us to be happy. You think, well, that doesn't really make any sense. It's good for our health. It feels good. It's what we're yearning for. Why would we shoot ourselves in the foot? I mean, it's one thing when you make an honest mistake. But when a lot of us look at the choices and the decisions that we make, so much of the way that we live, you realize this is not a simple misguided attempt or an honest mistake. This is a very deep-seated self-sabotage in order to ensure that I'm not happy. So Isha, our questioner, has touched upon something really deep. And the reason that we are afraid of happiness is because inside of ourselves, we don't believe that we deserve it. And so in order to become happy, it creates so much conflict in us. I don't deserve this. I shouldn't have it. It's not right. I'm not good enough. It's going to be taken away. It won't last. It can't be real. They've got the wrong person. Right? How many of us have been in a beautiful relationship with someone a good friend, best friend, a romantic partner, whatever it may be. And you get that sense of, they don't really know me. If they really knew me, they wouldn't actually love me so much. Or someone really is wonderful to you. They appreciate you so much. And you think, well, that's because you don't really know me. Or that's just because you have rose-colored glasses. That's just because you see the divine. Look at how we are so unable, but also unwilling to actually accept the beauty and the divinity of our own selves. And that's because on deep levels, for a variety of different reasons, based on our own families of origin, our own situations, we think that we don't deserve that happiness. And so we need to keep it away. Maybe we were told when we were young, either directly or indirectly, you're stupid, you're worthless, you're no good. You're not as good as your brother, sister, cousin, neighbor. You're stupid, you're lazy, you're irresponsible, you'll never amount to anything. Good for nothing. Right? There's a lot of different vocabulary words that get used. There's a lot of different language. Some of it is verbal, some of it is nonverbal. But a lot of us get that when we're young, again, either directly or indirectly. And because we get given it at a young age when we're so suggestible and so vulnerable and our whole sense of self is being formed, and especially because so frequently it's given to us by people we trust, a parent, a teacher, a family member, that we take it in as truth. I am worthless. I am irresponsible. I am lazy. I am good for nothing. And so in order to maintain our loyalty to that person, in order to maintain our loyalty to what we've always thought about ourselves, we have to make sure that we don't actually ever succeed. We have to make sure that we don't actually thrive, that we don't actually experience joy, because then that would turn everything we always had thought about ourselves into a lie, which would turn whoever told us that into a liar. And that's not something that most of our psyches really want to go through. And so it's a lot easier to just make sure that we don't experience happiness, to keep ourselves small, to keep ourselves failing, to keep ourselves alone, to keep ourselves miserable, so that the one who told us that will be right. And we can stay loyal to them, to that way of thinking. Another reason a lot of us are afraid of happiness is because it takes away all the excuses that we have for why we are not living the lives that we know we should be living, why we're not giving and sharing and serving. Because, oh my God, if I'm miserable, if I'm suffering from severe depression and anxiety, well, then I've got a really good reason not to be sharing my light with the world. I've got a really good reason not to be fulfilling my dharma, my purpose here on earth. A good reason not to be serving the world with my gifts. And so, if I allow myself to be happy, well, then I can no longer hide under the, the covers of depression and anxiety and misery, then suddenly I've got to show up. Show up as a being of light. Show up as arms, hands of the divine here on earth. But Isha, what I can tell you is being happy is your birthright. It is the core of who you are. And every minute that you live cowering from happiness, you're cowering from yourself, from the truth of who you are. And so it's just a matter of time until you have to unfold that. The universe is really patient. You don't want to do it this life, no problem. You can come back and do it next life. But that's what you're here for, is to see the truth of who you are. And that truth of who you are is a being of light, a being of love, a being of joy. And so it's time to stop cowering from that and to allow yourself to see that. For all of us to allow ourselves to see that. Because that's true not only about Isha, but it's true about all of us. We're spirit. We have bodies. Our bodies are beautiful. They're wonderful tools. But who we really are is spirit, soul, consciousness, divinity, love, truth. And we're here to open up our eyes to be able to see that. So however long you want to wait is okay. But you'll just have to keep coming back to do it over and over again. So when you know you've got something to do, you can't actually procrastinate forever. And at the end of the day, it's only going to bring you joy. It's happiness we're talking about here. It's not doing the dishes or taking out the trash or cleaning up the room or balancing your checkbook or whatever else we procrastinate. The end result of this isn't a headache. It's joy. So whatever you think, whatever someone may have told you or implied, whatever illusion you're living in, let it go. You deserve happiness. It is the nature of who you are.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit rain.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me. So it's interesting. We say the head or the heart, but it's actually not reason and emotions. And here's why. Emotions actually take place in the head. Emotions are not actually of the heart. They're in the brain. They're chemical and electrical patterns of energy in the brain. They're fleeting. Joy, fear, despair, ecstasy, boredom, frustration. We kind of go in and out, in and out. They fleet. And anything chemical can affect them. Not getting enough sleep, being dehydrated, eating certain foods, fasting, not getting enough sleep, intake of alcohol or drugs. I mean, there's anything that impacts the chemistry of your brain is going to impact your emotions. When we say not to make decisions based on emotions, it doesn't mean not to use your heart. A lot of people think, well, if we say not to use your emotions, it means don't use my heart. It means I only should use my rational mind. And that's not actually the answer. There's three things going on here. One is what we would call our rational mind, which is wonderful. For all things that can be weighed and measured, decisions you have to make yourself a good list of the pros and the cons. Checkbook needs to be balanced. Mathematical problem needs to be solved. You have to get from point A to point B in a foreign place. You don't know the way. You need to read a map and understand. This is all rational mind stuff. It's wonderful. As long as what it's looking at is something separate from self. What the rational mind cannot know is the self. It cannot look inward, which is why when we meditate, the whole goal is to quiet the rational mind. The rational mind is the one who, as you go into meditation, says, this is such a waste of time. I knew it wouldn't work. I've got so much to do. My God, I haven't gotten one thing ticked off my to-do list today. Here I am. It's never going to work. I know it's not going to work. This is ridiculous. Has it been 20 minutes yet? This is the workings of what you would call the rational mind. The more you listen to it, the more you realize how utterly irrational it actually is, embarrassingly so. But euphemistically, we're going to call it the rational mind, even though it's actually the chaotic mind. That's what you want to stop or slow down or quiet when you sit to meditate. Not so that you can feel emotions, because the emotions are actually a product of that chaotic mind. I see something that makes me angry. I see something that makes me frustrated. Somebody sends me an email, a text message. I'm all upset. What we want to tap into is actually an intuitive heart, not an emotional heart. The intuitive heart is what you could call the sixth sense. And that's our way of knowing. Not through accumulation of facts, not because I've weighed the pros and the cons, not because I've held something at an arm's distance and checked it off, but just because I know. In the same way that a caterpillar knows how to become a butterfly, that a seed knows how to sprout and become a tree, that a tree growing in the forest knows to grow sideways instead of straight up. It's amazing. You walk through a forest Almost all the trees grow straight up. And then every once in a while, you find a tree growing absolutely horizontal to the ground. Why? Because in that spot, if that tree grew straight up, it wouldn't get enough light. Now, they live through light, through the practice of photosynthesis. That's how the tree makes its energy. It's how it lives. And somehow that tree knew, I'm going to grow sideways. If I grow straight up, I'm going to die. I'm going to suffocate. Grow sideways. How? Through what I call an intelligence in the universe. Our ability to tap into that is what we call intuition. It's that sense of knowing that isn't from a book, that isn't from a lecture, that isn't from Google. You just know. Like all of these things in nature, just know. Nobody told them. There was no course, no training manual, not even a Bhagavad Gita for them. Nothing. All they have is some ability to tap into some kind of wisdom that tells the caterpillar, not today, not today, not today, now, today, go. I have no idea how, but I love it. Because it proves to me that there is that wisdom that exists, that intelligence that exists. How does the tree know to grow sideways? It's programmed to grow straight up, but it knows. So when we talk about making decisions in our life, it's not reasonable or unreasonable mind versus chaotic emotions. It's mental framework, the rational, the irrational, the academic, the emotional, all of that on one side, and this intuitive heart on the other side. And what I would actually say is both of them are useful. I mean, I'm an academic at heart in the first half of my life of training. I love science, I love academia, I love learning. And it's wonderful when what you need to do is balance a checkbook or get from point A to point B. Some people have that intuition. I don't. If you put me in the middle of some random city and said, all right, you're supposed to be at, you're at point A, you need to be at point B, use your intuition, I'd never make it. I have no sense of direction. I'm very glad at those times to have maps, to have an ability to follow directions, to be able to understand, this street, okay, we were here, there's a landmark, north, south, east, west, left, right. It's really helpful. It's really helpful when you want to plan things, execute things, implement things. It's a wonderful tool. But you've also got another wonderful tool that you don't want to neglect, and that's the intuition. And in aspects relating to yourself, to the core of who you are here on planet Earth, there's no equation that can help you. There's no app that can help you. There's no map that can help you. There's nothing that's better than your own intuitive heart. So when he says don't be emotional, it means don't go up and down. Don't lose your grounding. When you think of someone who's too emotional, it means they're ungrounded. They're just going up and down. You're nice to them, they're happy. You're not nice to them, they're sad. All the traffic lights are green on their way home from the office. It's a great day. All the traffic lights are red. It's an awful day. He means get a hold of yourself. Anchor yourself, ground yourself, for God's sakes. Stop bouncing all over the place like the ball in a pinball machine. Hitting your head against everything, turn on a light here, ring a bell over there. He's saying get a hold of yourself. Anchor in something deep. Use your wisdom. Not just the wisdom of the rational mind, but your intuitive heart. That's what he gets him into as he starts taking him along the path of yoga. It's a path of sinking into your intuition, sinking into the knowing of thyself. So that's the path.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. Is it enough to just live a good life doing a little bit of bhakti for God and doing some good deeds? Well, it depends what your goal is. It's like saying, do I have to drive a long distance, or is it okay to not drive a long distance? Well, it depends where you want to end up. If you want to go to Paris, you've got to drive a long distance or get on a flight. But if you only want to go to Haridwar, well, then you don't need to drive very far. In the same way, you need to ask yourself, what is my goal? There's no spiritual police that says, thou shalt crave moksha. What we do know is that ultimately the final highest destination experience of our soul, this Jiva Atma, is what we call moksha, liberation, meaning the drop becomes one with the ocean. That instead of being separate, I become one. I merge back into the divine from which I came, from which I was never separate. You don't want to do it this lifetime? No problem. The universe is infinitely patient. You don't want to do it next lifetime? No problem. The universe is infinitely patient. You get to keep coming back. on doing as much as you want each lifetime. The question, of course, becomes why? Like, why would you unnecessarily take lots of extra time to go somewhere that you know is the destination anyway, if you could actually get there faster? But that's entirely up to you. We've been created with willpower, with free will, with buddhi, with the ability to be disciplined or not so disciplined, to choose whatever we want to choose, to do a little bhakti, to do a lot of bhakti. Actually, I could tell you, I'm not 100% sure what a little bhakti means. Meaning, either you love someone or you don't. I don't know if you can love a little. You may do few things for the loved one. I mean, there are people who shower their husbands or wives or children with lots of gifts and write poems for them and write songs for them. I mean, there's, we all know those people who just are these sort of effusive beings of constant giving. Every 5 minutes they're saying, "Oh my God, I love you so much." And then we all know those people who love just as deeply. But maybe you've never actually heard them say, "I love you." They love just as deeply, but maybe they don't show up every day with a gift or even every year with a gift. But you know it, you feel it. And it's just as good. When you really know someone deeply loves you, that's what matters. And God is the same. God is even more. I mean, as a human, we may still think, well, though, if you could bring a gift every once in a while, that would be nice. But with God, all God wants is that we should love. So you chant sometimes, you chant all the time. Okay. You do puja sometimes, you do puja a little, you do puja a lot. All right, either way. The main thing is that you love God. And if you don't love God, then all the puja and all the chanting, it's wonderful as vehicles, as paths to help you start to love God. But they're not a substitute for loving God. They're ways of catalyzing love of God in your hearts. We read scriptures, we chant God's name, we tell beautiful stories, not as substitutes for loving God, but as ways to trigger us to start to love God. And when you do, Puja Swamiji always says, when you love someone, you don't actually have to take a mala and go, Rekha, 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 Rekha. Like, you love Rekha. You don't need to be doing her jap mala. And so with God, the point is to really love God. You do a little puja or a lot of puja. I don't actually think God minds that much either way. I don't necessarily think either of them determines moksha. And the reason is that we've got sages and saints and mystics and enlightened beings of all different religions in the world, including some that don't do puja. And so if puja were a prerequisite for attaining enlightenment, that would be like saying that all of the prophets and seers of different religions actually hadn't attained enlightenment, which I don't believe. So moksha is the goal of your soul here in the body, ultimately returning to its oneness. what you choose to do in this lifetime to have that experience, to attain gyan, wisdom, that leads to this moksha, that's up to you. But spirituality is not something that you want to be looking at kind of what's the bare minimum I need to do to skim by. You'll just come back next lifetime and do the rest. But also realize that it's not like a full-time job with a really long to-do list, that you have to stop everything else you're doing in order to get through all of these. I've got to do this much chanting, this much prayer, this much puja, this much this. Just love God deeply, fully. And if you don't have that deep bhakti yet, engage in a path of gyan. Attain wisdom. Read scriptures. Discover the reason you're here, the truth of you. And slowly, slowly, gyan will blossom. Bhakti will blossom. And through it all, recognize that every single moment, through your actions, through your karma, you actually have the opportunity to reach moksha. How to allow every action to be one that is in service of my awakening. Every action that is in service of loving God, of serving God. Every action in service of truth, in alignment with truth. So we've got all these different ways of how to live. But don't go looking for the shortest possible way. You've been given a very powerful gift in this human birth. Don't waste it. But don't take it like a big stressful burden either. It's a joy. It's a joy like wisdom is a joy, like love is a joy, like awakened action is joy. Take it like that. And then that moksha comes even while we're living. What we call jiva mukti. Because it's not freedom from the body, it's freedom in the body. And again, doesn't happen this life, no problem. You'll get to come back to this beautiful planet again. Assuming we've done our part to take care of it.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation. Triple soy lattes used to be a very important part of my life. So, you know, when I was growing up in California, in the 80s and early 90s before I moved to India. There was a very, very popular bumper sticker that lots and lots and lots of people had on their car, women, on their car that said, "A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle." And it had this picture of a fish on a bicycle. Obviously meaning really no use for them, like what's a fish going to do with a bicycle? And on the one hand, as our beautiful sister, calling herself Cafe Latte, has asked, why do I need a man? Do I need a man? And what's the mantra to realize that I don't? Well, first of all, you don't need anyone. This idea that somehow we are half and we're waiting for our other half, that isn't true. It's a myth, I think, perpetuated actually by the makers of Hallmark cards or matchmaking services, much more than anybody on a deep spiritual level. We are not half. There's no spiritual teaching that says you come into this world as half and you need to find your other half. And until you do, you're only half. In fact, the spiritual teachings that are so beautiful are actually about this embodiment of both together. There's a beautiful, beautiful murti that I've got actually in my mandir that someone gave to me, God, almost 25 years ago. It's a murti of Krishna and Radha, but they're merged together. Usually when you see them, it's like the two of them sitting next to each other on a swing. This is actually Bhagavan Krishna's with his flute and Radha's next to him, but they're actually merging into one. And it's actually one being. And it's his arm over here and actually her arm holding the flute. And the face is half and half. And it's this beautiful image of not half and half, but of one full, complete being with the energy of both. And ultimately, that is what the spiritual practice is about. You know, I remember many, many years ago doing an interview. Someone was interviewing me about women on spiritual paths and about that divine feminine. And she was asking me about Puja Swamiji. And she said, it's so beautiful. She said, he seems almost genderless. And I said, he's not genderless. He's genderful. That it's not that he doesn't have a gender, but rather that he has the fullness of genders. That, yeah, he's a man in the fullness of that strength. And yet he's also the Divine Mother. At the same time, in one being, those beautiful principles of the divine masculine and the divine feminine, the divine father, the divine mother, and of course the divine child, all in one. And ultimately that on a spiritual practice is what we're going for. When we talk about worship of the divine feminine, for example, it's not just, women over here, we're going to worship Durga, and the men over there, you people worship Shiva. It's not that at all. It's everyone worships everyone, such that those principles of Shiv, of Shakti, come into me. It's not, I'm in a female body, therefore I'm going to embody Shakti, and you're in a male body, therefore you will embody Shiv. It's actually given to us for us all to embody both. So this idea of wholeness isn't about let me go out and find my other half so I'm whole. It's let me dive so deeply that I'm no longer stuck in my gender. It's no longer about my chromosomes or my genitalia. But it's actually about the soul, the spirit, that fullness of it all. So no, you don't need a man. You do need to experience that fullness within you. And so I know for women, a lot of us are really focused on goddess worship and embodying that mother goddess within us. And that's beautiful, we should be. But we should also be focused on worship of the divine masculine. Now, if you happen to be married, and if your spiritual practice happens to be to worship the divine in the form of your husband, no problem. You could do that. You could worship the divine masculine in him, and he could worship the divine feminine in you. And if you come together on a place of soul, spirit, consciousness union, you could experience that fullness together. But if that's not your path, well, don't worry. You actually can experience it within yourself through your spiritual practices, through worship of the principles of Bhagwan Shiv, through worship of that Purush, that sacred principle of the Purusha. So, no, you don't need a man. You can experience that fullness, and you should experience that fullness within you. What you do need is connection in life, and that absolutely does not by any means need to come in the form of a spouse. But we're wired for connection. And so if it's not going to be in the form of a spouse, don't worry. It doesn't even have to be in the form of other human beings. It can be in the divine. As long as you're able to connect with the divine on a very regular basis. And through a lot of that which you see. So can you experience the divine in a tree, in a sunset? In the stars in the night sky? In a flower blossoming? Can you experience that divine wherever you look? But also in the form of other humans is a really beautiful opportunity. That's what we have communities for, sanghas. And it's why so many people on deep spiritual practices come to ashrams, go for retreat, gather with a spiritual community. Because that connection is really beautiful. And it doesn't mean that you have to sit and have long conversations with people. On a lot of retreats, they're all silent. People never speak to each other. In some of them, they don't even look in each other's eyes. You're supposed to not even make eye contact. But simply being together in the space is very, very powerful. Simply being in the energy of the divine together is very powerful. It's why you take Arti, for example. Well, it's not like after Arti we're turning around and saying, "Hi, nice to meet you, what's your name?" Or exchanging business cards or anything. We're chanting and singing and smiling and then turning around and walking away. But that experience of being together, of being in the same energetic field, of praying together, connecting to the divine together, is deeply powerful. It's why we sit in Satsang. So the mantra, it's not about you don't need anyone. It's about find those with whom you can connect, who are feeding your spiritual growth. Go to kirtan. Go to services in temple, in mandir, in church, wherever you worship. Go sit in a park and just enjoy the children playing on the swings. Go sit in nature. Sit beneath the trees. Watch the little ants build an ant hill. They build holes sometimes too, but either way. Connect with nature, the animals, the birds. Connect with others. Spend a day just, sitting in a Starbucks. And notice everyone who walks in and sort of just feel their energy. Don't get on your phone. Don't read the newspaper. Don't distract yourself. Just allow yourself to energetically connect with every being who enters. With that flow of creation. Because ultimately they're all you. One of my most beautiful meditation practices, especially these days when there's such a crowd in the Arti, is just to allow my eyes to be ever so slightly open and watch the crowd on the ghat facing us, the Shankar Bhagwan ghat, to just watch this sea of people. And this beautiful flow of creation. I don't know any of their names. They're too far away to even see any identifying characteristics about them. But just this flow of creation, of energy, that here we are, praying together, singing together, being together is so powerful. So don't cut yourself off entirely. But you definitely don't need to limit yourself to one. So the mantra, there's so many, but let's stick with something simple. The mantra is Soham. It's what we chant when we do our guided group meditations. It means I am that. I am that, all of that. The sea of people. The birds, the flowers, the trees. The baby and the basket and the shopping cart in front of me as I check out at the grocery store. The divine. I'm that. I don't need one being to make me full. I'm one with all. I am all. I am that. So, hum. Let that be your beautiful mantra. When you need a little bit more convincing to the thinking mind, just remind yourself that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week, and I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on OMTimes Radio.